42. How formal should an interview be?
Interviews can be as formal or as informal as you'd like them to be. Interviews are extensions of the interviewer's personality. People who are very formal and systematic in their approaches to dealing with others should reflect that very same style during the interview meeting. On the other hand, people with bubbly personalities who are, by nature, informal and casual should have no problem allowing their personalities to shine. Although this question is fairly common among hiring managers, there really isn't a definitive answer that should dictate your interviewing style. Instead, just remember that you will tend to hire in your own image. So finding people who are most like you will result from your genuine concern and desire to identify candidates geared for progression in their careers who can make the same contribution to your company that they are making to their current employers. Tell me more. That being said, it's time for some self-awareness and sensitivity training. My interviewing style is very casual. I am not very formal in anything that I do, including business meetings or conference presentations to hundreds of people. What does that look like to candidates? Well, in my office, candidates will find cookies, licorice, or a number of other doodads to break the ice of the initial meeting. I typically offer candidates something to drink. Most politely decline, while some ask for water. I'll usually follow up my initial invitation with, "You mean I can't get you anything at all, or anything else? How about some beer, wine, or a highball of some sort?" That always gets them laughing, and before long we'll be into a deep conversation about their backgrounds and personalities. I know that may sound a little too informal for most of you, but I like to have fun during an interview. Most candidates appreciate the corny humor, and it puts people's defenses to rest. And, yes, there's a logic to all this. Besides the fun, I really want people to confide in me during an interview. If candidates respond, "Well, Paul, I normally wouldn't say this during an interview, but... I know I've gotten to the real person behind all the interview hype. In addition, informal interviewers often conduct their meetings from the couch or a coffee table where employer and candidate are on the same level playing field. There is typically an effort to establish a friendly relationship both in informal warm-up talk, situational seating, and a non-threatening questioning style. What about more formal interviewers? How do their interviews sound? Well, they're typically more structured, and they often follow a predetermined format to ensure fairness. Formal interviewers possess a more point-counterpoint questioning style. Humor isn't typically part of the interview meeting. Instead, candidates respond more formally and, yes, mechanically, to the questions asked of them. Formal interviewers typically sit at their desks, they take notes of candidates' responses, and the roles of interviewer and interviewee are clearly defined and rarely transgressed. Again, these aren't negatives. It's simply a matter of being aware of how your style may come across to strangers. In addition, interviewing formats often differ between formal and informal interviewers. Formal interviewers tend to ask candidates questions first and then go on to describe the position and the company. There is often a palpable break in the interview meeting where the conversation switches from employer questions to company and position information. Candidate questions then follow. Informal interviewers, on the other hand, usually weave information together throughout the meeting. The meeting may begin with candidate questions, proceed directly to information about the company and the job, go off on some kind of personal tangent, and then return to candidate questions. There are some advantages and disadvantages to these styles. Informal interviewers run the risk of giving away the farm if they share too much information with the candidate up front. After all, Candidates will adapt their answers to fit your company's needs if they're given the opportunity to hear your game plan up front. So informal interviewers, beware. As much as you enjoy the spontaneous communication with candidates, don't share too much about the position until you've figured out what candidates have accomplished and are looking for in their careers. Formal interviewers, you've got to be aware of an inherent flaw in your more structured style. It sometimes becomes necessary to cut an interview short because a candidate isn't qualified for the job. How do you stop short an otherwise unproductive interview meeting to save yourself time? Well, it's by short-circuiting the format that you hold to so dearly. For example, if you've determined after 5 minutes that a candidate won't work, skip from wherever you are in your structured interview paradigm to this one magic question: what are the 3 or 4 criteria you're looking for in selecting your next company? After the candidate responds, thank him for taking the time to meet with you, and give him your business card. That should save you lots of time by cutting short an otherwise unproductive interview. A rejection letter can then be sent to close the communication loop regarding the individual's candidacy.